Hi Tom, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate the time. So TCM, tell me about yourself and TCM. I see you're fully kitted today.
Yeah, so my name's Tom. Run a small air conditioning business down in Crawley, TCM Air Conditioning, and yeah, it's been sort of 2 and a bit years now. Been going, so yeah, I'm just sort of just trying to keep grafting.
All right, quite a recent business then.
Oh yeah, it's not been going too long. I mean, I've been in the trade for how long now? Probably, over 15 years probably, since I was 17. So, yeah, it's only recently that I've sort of gone on this sort of venture.
Wow, so what made you start at 17 and thought this was the industry for you?
I kind of got forced into it by my mum, yeah. So
What did she do?
No, she didn't force me into it. It was more like like growing up, I wanted to be a BMXer, like a freestyle, like ramps and stuff. That's what I wanted to do. But at that time, it wasn't really seen as like earning crazy money and a lot of risk involved. But my mum was a recruitment agent, and she was just like, oh, I've got a week's work with like an air conditioning guy. You should go. And then it just kind of snowballed from there, really.
Oh wow, what a journey. And do you still BMX at the same time?
Yeah, I still try and get out a little bit. It's definitely gone away a lot just because of work. Injuries is a big one. But yeah, I mean, I try and sort of do that just to, once in a while, dust the cobwebs off.
Well, so you've got your own business, you do BMX on the side, and what made you want to start your own business? That must have been, was that an easy process for you?
That wasn't. So it was basically, so I had somebody who I knew and gave me an opportunity to go and sort of work with them because they was running a heating business. I was doing the cooling side, so it kind of made sense to bring the two together. But I did have a knee injury, quite a substantial one, and it was sort of my own fault, I guess. I was out BMXing and injury happened, and it sort of just didn't work out, which I completely understand from their point of view. It's sort of, they don't want anyone, being at risk while being on the job. So yeah, sort of kind of got forced into it, I guess. I want to say, but
that must have been, if you don't mind me saying, do correct me if I'm wrong, it must have been tough when you got that injury.
It was well tough, yeah. Just because like it was that thing of you being a BMXer, like you don't expect, like you don't go out there with the intention of getting hurt. You always know that there's that risk, but it's like a split second and things just change. And I ended up snapping 2 ligaments in my leg. Well, I've snapped 1 ligament, another one is sort of partially torn, and then people will probably know that, like, they see it. Like, I normally wear like a knee brace when I'm at work, just because it's like really wobbly, unstable. It's got a lot better now. Like it's pretty much good now, but more of a precaution. But yeah, definitely going through that time was a big jump because I didn't have anything at that time. So
yeah, it's kind of that, that you were on that kind of one-track journey. That's what you wanted to do, and then having to kind of figure out what that next step was. It must have been challenging in terms of kind of accepting that that wasn't the route you were going to take. What got you from accepting it to suddenly going, let me do my own business now?
It was a mix of a couple of things. So it was a case of I was already in the process of sort of, I've left my old company, which I was there for a long time. Great people, good work. But I left there to take on this venture with this other person. And then when that fell through, it was more like, right, it's actually got to happen. It's like there's no choice, because I can't go back somewhere else with an injury. I can't go back to my old place because I've already left there, and there's only sort of kind of one way to go, which was self-employment. But again, like, my wife was really supportive. She was just like, look, if you want to do it, we'll like just go for it, and I'll be there every step of the way. So yeah, that was definitely a big help.
Wow. It's great that you have that support from your wife, and you know, in terms of, you know, where you are right now, you know, from your experiences in the past, you know, you're here today because you know, we're here to talk about, you know, your just experiences about mental health, and yeah, with through all of that and where you are today, do you mind sharing a bit about your story as to why you want to speak to others about?
I mean, I'm more than happy to share. Obviously, like, you know, it's not, my journey is probably not for the faint-hearted, I guess, is probably the right scenario, like the right term, I mean. But yeah, I mean, I can start from the beginning and like give you the sort of milestones of where I am at this point. So
you're welcome to give me whatever you're happy
yeah,
to
so
share.
sort of growing up, you know, relatively happy kids, you know. It was just my mum, like my mum and dad divorced, so it was just brought up by my mum and my brother. But then when, sometimes it's a bit tough to talk about, and probably people don't want to hear it, but when I was a young kid, between like the age of probably 6 and probably 12, 13 years old, like I went through child abuse as a kid. I can't really say who it is, just because I think it's just not what we're here for. But, you know, went through that. It was a pretty tough time in regards to that. It's really sort of affected my ability to process problems. It's affected how I think about things, and, you know, sort of the what ifs. So like, it started off, my mental health journey was probably at that point where it was sort of quite, I don't know, I want to say secret, you know, growing up. And then went through a breakup with an ex, basically. And this was, yeah, in my sort of like mid to late 20s. And then I had nowhere to go after that. So, like, you know, we went our separate ways. I had nowhere to go to stay anywhere. So I was essentially like homeless for a year, like sleeping in my van, like, and it was like a company van, and it was full of tools in the back. So it was like, it wasn't like a camper van, if that makes sense. It was like in the front seat in a sleeping bag for a year, you know. You know, luckily enough, I had a pretty good job at the time, and, you know, sort of, I was working in leisure centres, so I could have a shower and, you know, do all that, those other things. But yeah, I mean, it was pretty tough at that point. But I mean, there's loads more. It just depends how far you want to go, or, you know.
I just want to first of all just to say, you know, thank you for being brave and just sharing that, because like you started off with, it's, you know, it's a difficult topic, because it sounds as though you're from the sound of it, it sounds like you're worrying about, does it feel like you're offloading it to someone and you don't want to, but it sounds as though you're kind of not terrified to share, but more kind of fearful of burdening. It sounded like that.
Yeah, so you know, it is a tough subject to talk about. No, like, it's probably, I don't have kids, you know. You know, the first people I told, they couldn't really sort of comprehend it. And then, you know, when I told my mum, it was like the biggest blow she's ever had. Like, it was devastating for her. So when you talk about it, it's sort, it's more the fact of, you know, she feels guilty because she had no idea. You know, I told her when I was like 30. How old am I now? Yeah, I told her when I was like 32. So that's a long time, you know. And yeah, it is a bit sort of like taboo, I want to say. Like, no one really wants to hear about it. Not that they don't want to hear about it, but it's quite hard to sort of go back and forth with that subject, you know. So it's not something that I come out with quite often, you know. It's sort of it does get pretty crazy, like, talking about it, but.
No, and I know, you know, I know what you mean by that, because, you know, we've done different interviews, and some of the issues people talk about, it doesn't attach to a taboo, but, you know, I think within, you know, to talk about, you know, your past at last, you know, I can imagine why it felt hard to come forward and to talk about it. So, you know, I think you sharing, you know, will make a massive, massive life-changing difference to others that may go through something similar. So, obviously, when you told your mum about it, what did that do with your relationship? Was there an impact on that?
No, not really. Like, we're pretty close as like a family. Like, we've been together forever, you know. She sort of brought me up. She had no money, like, you know, she was going out working 3 jobs and, you know, doing things to make ends meet, which at the minute is sort of like quite, it's quite common, you know. I think a lot of people are in that situation. And seeing that growing up, it's sort of, you know, we've stuck together like the whole time. So when I told her, and she was like, how? Like, you know, we're so close, why didn't you say anything? And for me, it was more the fact where I was so young, and I'd never had that sort of chat with anybody. I didn't have the birds and the bees talk and all that. Like, I didn't know what was going on. I was like 6 or 7, whatever. And, you know, when I did get older and I realised what was going on, it was sort of like, you feel embarrassed at the time. I know it seems ridiculous, but at the time you're like, oh, I can't say anything to anybody. Especially like, you know, even as close as like, you know, 25 years ago, you know, it's not the sort of like the impact that it would have had. It wasn't as understanding back then. It was sort of like, you know, the taunting and the sort of, you know, the stigma I feel was probably quite a lot more then, which is why I kept my mouth shut.
So what made you, what was it that made you think, you know what, I'm going to open up?
Literally, I got to breaking point. Basically, that was it. It was like, you know, again, like, depends how sort of deep you want to go with it, but, you know, like, suicide is like a real thing. Like, and I've been on that side of the coin. Well, I've actually been on both sides. I've witnessed it and dealt with it myself. And it's sort of, at that point, it's like, right, it's either going to go one way or the other. And when I told my wife about it, we was only going out for, what, 3 months? Maybe not even that. And I just like burst into tears. Like, just, I had a breakdown. Like, and I just didn't even know how to even tell anybody. It was so weird. And it was sort of after that, it's like, have I done the right thing? You know, have I done the right thing? Oh, should I have said something? Should I have just kept it secret? It's all sort of, it's all very surreal when it comes out.
You feel exposed. Right?
Oh, like, and the thing is, unless someone's got a really big secret that they've never told anybody, it feels like you're gonna burst, you know. And this was after the time where I was like in my van for a year, and then when I met my wife, like, I didn't have anything. Like, I literally had, you know, a bag when I met her, you know. So it was, as you say, felt very vulnerable at that time. So it's quite difficult.
And you said earlier that even after you told who's your wife now, you still weren't sure how you were feeling. Did that get better over time now that or do you feel like you still feel the same about it?
I mean, obviously when you do open up and you do say these things, you know, people are going to have that quick second to be like, right, okay, they need to process it, because it's quite a big topic. And, you know, that there was no judgment there. Like, maybe I told the right person at that time, you know, which obviously I must have done. But, you know, there was no sort of stigma. There was no sort of, like, teasing or, you know, there was no, it wasn't like feeling sorry for you. They wasn't feeling sorry for you, you know. It was more sort of like support rather than like, look, it's going to be fine. You've been through this and it's going to be fine. Like, and I think, obviously people go through their life with that secret forever, no matter what it is.
No, absolutely. And, you know, it sounds like you kind of started to feel vulnerable when you started to tell people. So I suppose, are you happy that you did tell people?
It's a mixed bag for me, to be honest. Like I'll be honest, it's definitely mixed. Just because it's more like, at the start, I thought I was gonna literally burst with whatever it was inside of me, just like this sort of constant panic and this constant like worry or whatever. And then as soon as I told somebody, it was more for like, as soon as I started telling people, it was more for them, you know, more to like get them out of their problems. And then when I did an interview for a BMX magazine, and it was sort of like, that subject has never really been crazy spoken about because it's such a sort of male dominate. Like obviously now there's like females and stuff involved, but back then it was quite male dominated. So to have somebody come out and be a little bit sort of vulnerable and tell their secrets, it was kind of, I think it was received really well. But yeah, in regards to myself personally, sometimes I wish I'd never said, but I think it's better for me and other people that they know the truth. They know how I feel or why I act a certain way, or, you know. And I think that's what it is. It's more because you act a certain way and they say, what's going on? And you say nothing. They're like, there must be something, you know.
Yeah, it's kind of bringing the people in your kind of inner circle, part of that, so they can get at, for example, your wife. So in terms of what support do you have in place at the moment for yourself? Or
I've got to be honest, I don't have any support. Like, I don't, as in, I have, you know, I go to work every day, I do long hours, there's a lot of alone time, commuting, being on jobs. And, you know, I used to do, you know, like the BMX thing, like, you know, just be sort of a bit, try and clear your mind, you know. But even that's kind of slowed down a little bit. So for me, personally, I've had a little bit of support here and there from other people, but nothing sort of substantial, if that makes sense.
absolutely, yeah, that does make. So you've tried to reach out to other support, but something doesn't. It's not 100% fitting with you. So in terms of, you know, again, thank you so much, you know, for sharing. I just want to thank you because honestly, it's a very difficult topic to share and expose yourself to. But I guess if you were, like you've said, people have come to you, and I guess if there are other people similar to yourself, Tom, that is dealing with that, what kind of advice would you give them? Because obviously, hearing you're just not sure how you feel about talking.
Yeah, because it's such a minefield to navigate. If you don't know, and if you haven't been through it, or you're like stuck in a rut, it's such a big minefield to try and follow. Like, there's no one says, oh, you should go down this path and do this. There's no instruction manual, you know. But just reach out, just try, because you might be surprised. You know, it might be the fact of like you're super scared about what you're trying to get across. But you'll be very surprised at how people receive it. You know, people are very, you know, the people that have sort of bad things to say, you haven't even got to worry about them people because they're not, like, they're not involved in your life. And if they are, they shouldn't be there if they've got that mentality.
Brilliant. So basically, if someone has been through something similar, to reach out.
100%.
Even though you're not sure what the outcome is,
Yeah.
it's better than not doing anything, if that's what you're trying to say here, because you bottle it up, don't you? And then...
Well, that's it. And it is kind of like opening Pandora's box. Yeah. You know, it's sort of like, do I keep it shut and then do I keep it there? But at the same time, you're like, if I open this box and I start telling people, it might be a really big weight lifted off your shoulders, and you can sort of start to navigate, process what's going on. You know, I still have wobbles all the time. Like, it doesn't go away. It really doesn't go away. But when you're acting a certain way, or where people are like, oh, there's something wrong, or, you know, at least they can sort of understand why, rather than like, oh, he's in a bit of a mood. What's going on? You know. And I think that's more what we've got to understand is sort of people act a certain way, but you don't know why. And if people say, oh, I'm really upset because of this, or I can't do this because of this problem, then it will be a lot better received rather than, you know, people just thinking the worst.
Absolutely. And, you know, by, you know, even though it's not going to be fixed or addressed, it's you feel, you know, you don't have to keep kind of, I think, explaining why something has happened, which ultimately hopefully builds that relationship so you can kind of move forward at the same time rather than kind of second guessing what they think is happening to you. But it's not to say that you know, we're not saying everyone needs to tell their story, because as long as you're just reaching out to someone. And I think, you know, in terms of, you know, your journey, you know, you mentioned being homeless at the same time, and what a journey you've had. So how was that? You know, that must have been a really nice experience. How did you overcome that?
You know what? It was when I started seeing, well, when me and my wife started seeing each other. But, like, you know, when she reached out to me, we met on Instagram. Like, we met on social media. So, like, you know, I'm going to work, I'm sleeping in a van, I'm like, you know, I could go and crash at a friend's house every now and again and, you know, sort of try and, you know, sort of tell them what's going on. But it was more sort of myself. I didn't know how to process it, so I just stayed away from people. So, yeah, it was more sort of like, yeah, it was pretty tough being in the van, and it's sort of like you've got to kind of keep this secret to people that you're not doing this or you are doing it, and it's sort of, it's very strange. Like, I didn't really let on that was happening. Not a lot of people knew about it at the time. And then, to come off subject, is while that was all happening, my cousin, so he ended up dying, but he was addicted to heroin, so he was like, you know, abusing substances basically. And my mum rang me and said, "Oh, your cousin's not feeling well, can you go and check on him?" Because he was going to the doctors or something was going on. And then I get to his apartment, and I was like, he's not here. Like, where is he? So then, luckily enough, before I left, I went to use the toilet, and the toilet was shut. And I was like, oh, mate, and I was like, kind of trying to listen through the wall, and yeah, I just heard him in there just like moaning and stuff, and I ended up sort of like just getting in the door, and he was just like just lying there, like there was like needle on the floor, needle in his bag, and he was like just ODing. And then, you know, at that time it was like I was in the worst situation you could think of, like mentally, and then having that on top of, like, you know, giving your cousin CPR and all that, and trying to ring the ambulance and all that, and he ended up dying like then. You know, he didn't even make it. He didn't even make it like past that point. So, and then you got to like deal with like police and coroners, and, you know, trying to process all that is crazy at that time. You know, so it was kind of like everything was just sort of stacking on top. You know,
And really, really big things. I think when we talk about mental health, you know, it can be many different things, and sometimes it can be little things. But it's when it's all on this, you know, all happening at the same time. That's when someone reaches that point of crisis. But yourself, these are really big things that have happened to you. So yeah, I guess in that, if you don't mind, I know this is very personal and deep, but obviously in that, you were homeless and you were kind of called to support. And when that happened, and just like you've said, you know, your cousin died in that moment. How did you process that eventually?
You know what? I didn't process it, to be honest. You know what? I just went out, and, you know, I had to do that thing of like, right, okay, I need a reset. So, you know, I ended up getting, you know, I was sort of going to parties and, you know, not drinking a lot, you know, but just sort of like going out on the weekends and things like that, just trying to sort of drown out the noise. But then when you think about it, at the end, that doesn't really help you. You know, all it does is it's just a plaster. You know, it doesn't really like give you the tools that, like, don't get me wrong, you'll enjoy yourself, but it doesn't cure the problem, you know. And in regards to processing it, you know what, I don't think I ever really did. Just because I think, you know, my aunt, so his mum, was, you know, she lost both her sons. So that cousin and my other cousin, Ben, he died from alcohol abuse. And I was there in a hospice with him. I was in hospice for like 8 days before, like, and he ended up dying. And it was just, you know, I'd never really processed it because I was so busy with my own stuff. You know, I was going to work, I was sort of trying to ride my bike, and, you know, you're trying to, you know, you're in a new relationship, and like all this other stuff is like piling on top. And now it's got to the point, as you say, you know, it's at that that boiling point. You know, it's sort of like it's pretty. It does get hard sometimes.
Are you? I think you mentioned earlier, but are you speaking to people about, you know, obviously things that are going on in your life?
I've never spoke to like my friends, like they know, like my close friends know what's gone on. You know, I did the BMX interview, and obviously like that sort of I hope would have sparked a conversation in regards to, you know, mental health, because a lot of people didn't have no idea. You know, it's sort of you mask it so well, but yeah, I mean it's just tough. I've never really spoke to anybody about it. Like, did try like a little bit of therapy and stuff, and you know, but I think you got to find the right person. I think at that point.
No, it's exactly that. I think, you know, ultimately everyone's so different, and you know, if you're, you know, ideally you need to speak to someone or try things that work for you, and you know, but the fact that you're talking about it is a massive step, and you know, I think acknowledging when you're doing that, acknowledging, you know, you know, your wife being there for you, and you know, in terms of if you were to, you know, tell someone in a similar position to you, you know, what would you encourage them to do or advise them to do if you could?
So I would say, no matter what your problem is, it could be the worst problems you can think of. It could be way worse than my story, but it could be way less. It could be sort of kind of you sort of hear, you know, story like, say for example, this situation right now, like, oh, I'm nowhere near as bad as that, or you know, like, why am I complaining? And it's sort of like, it doesn't matter how big or small the problem is, it still gives you the same feeling no matter what it is. So even if it's like financial worry, or it's, I don't know, family issues, whatever it is, it could be like really small problems, it still makes you feel bad. It doesn't matter what it is. So I would say just, you know, reach out to someone you can trust. And if you haven't got that, then reach out to a stranger, because a stranger a lot of the time, you know, not a stranger, I would say like, you know, like a therapist or a counsellor, or somebody who's not in your emotional circle, because a lot of those people take it to heart, you know, and when you're outside of that circle, people can look at it at face value and say, right, okay, this is what's going on, you know, this is why you feel this way, you know, and they don't judge you about it because they have no idea of your story. So I would say just go out, you'd be surprised. You know, like you might think, especially in the construction industry, people think they're going to get judged. People think like, you know, this sort of, I hate to say it, but this like man up mentality and stuff. And there is an element of that. Like, you know, you have got to get through the day. Like, and I totally get it, but I don't think people realise how much of a toll it takes on people when, you know, they're at work and they're feeling a certain way.
And what must be tough as well is, you said you and your partner, is it business partner? So how many of you are there in your business?
Oh no, so it's just me.
It's just you.
Yeah, so
It's just you.
like before I started TCM, it was like I went to work with, you know, like an old friend basically, and it just fell apart. Obviously knee injuries and sort of, you know, just one of the things just didn't work out. So, but yeah, it's just me on my own at the minute, and sort of, you know, trying to get that help is really hard when you're running a business alone, because you've got no one to bounce off. You know, even if you had a second person, you could be like, oh mate, like, I really don't feel good today. But being, you know, someone who works alone all the time, you don't really get that luxury.
No, exactly that. And you know, in terms of, you know, you've got your own personal things happening in your life, or is happening in your life, and then you've got your, you know, your work life too. So, you know, if you've not got that kind of connection or others to bounce off, that must be really hard, especially as well. You're on the road all the time, aren't you? So it's, when do you find that time? So what can you do? What do you do then to try and address that?
Luckily enough, being, you know, growing up, I hate to keep like sort of bringing it back, but like BMXing, I've got a really good, you know, I've got a really close group of friends who we've been through everything together. Like any story, you name it, we've done it. But I've also got an extended, you know, I could reach out to anybody in that sort of community and I'll be like, look, man, I don't feel too great. And they would respond. So in my situation, it's kind of great. But personally, I don't. I've got to be honest. Like personally, I just end up just burying myself into work, or I'll do like the long hours, or eat junk food, or But the thing that always brings me back is music. It's always been it's always been my favourite thing. So like my cousin, who I told you about earlier, he got me into music, art, graffiti, like all these like cool things as a kid. So like that sort of brings back good memories, So I normally just go back to something that makes me happy, and then try not to overthink the problems,
That's brilliant advice. That's worked for you. You've got community that you've formed here through BMX and just extended communities, but also music. We've done a few interviews. No one's mentioned music before, but I'm assuming you would just blast music in the van, and that will be your thing. So, do you ever have moments when you are, you're at work and you're finding today's not a good day? So, have you ever had those moments? And if so, what would you turn to? What would you do then?
I have them all the time. Like people, there is quite a lot of. I would say, social media is sort of like a big. It's so great in some respects, but it's not so great in other respects. So it's really good. There's a few people out there that are promoting mental health, and they really do hone in on it. But when you're there on your own on a job and you're breaking down, there's timeless amounts in the van where I've just been driving home and just burst into tears just because it's so overwhelming. It's like, this job hasn't gone right, or I need to get back to this customer, it's really busy, or that customer hasn't paid, all these things just start stacking up. I have breakdowns all the time, and people probably don't want to say that they don't. They don't want to sort of open up and say it. But I'll admit to it, And the thing that gets me through that is knowing that they're all temporary problems. They're all gonna go away. Like, anything can be repaired. If you make a mistake, someone out there can repair it, With regards to money, unfortunately, money is what makes the world go round. It's just one of them things. And you've just got to take it step by step. I feel like it's so easy to just blow everything out of proportion, overthink stuff. And sometimes you just got to take a step back and be like, right, okay, write a list down, just check it off. And then all of a sudden your worries will start going. But that's normally how I deal with it.
Brilliant. Like all the examples you mentioned about some of the reasons why you can have a bad day. It's really why from our perspective, as us Mates in Mind mental health charity, we're seeing that there's a call out from individuals who aren't part of an organisation that naturally would give them that support, for yourself. So if you are struggling, someone's not paid you, normally, if you were part of an organisation, that wouldn't be the burden on you, it would be on someone else to support you with that. So it's so challenging to work independently, but obviously it has its pros. So in terms of, have you thought of, if there was help out there, what would that look like to you if there was help for people like yourself that are working for themselves and just for themselves? What help would you like?
I think the thing with small businesses, whether you're a sole trader, whether you're a company, any sort of small business, and you're one or two people, it's really tough to get help because you can't, with these bigger firms, they're great to work on because they have an HR department. If you've got a problem at work, they'll sort it out for you. If you're financially stuck, you can go to them. If you're having troubles at home or whatever it is, you can go to someone, especially with your mental health, and go, look, I'm in a bit of a situation here, I really do need some help. And they can do that for you. They can get the ball rolling. Where as just one employee, you've got all these things you've got to worry about. I always say, being self-employed is 5 different jobs. And I think that, like, the sole trader, they can't go to an HR department. They can't go to, you know, somebody and go, actually, like, I'm really stuck here. All you can do is talk to yourself, you know, like, try and work it out. But I think the thing that needs to be different is, I think small trades or like small businesses need somewhere to go for that advice, you know, because they go home, they don't want to tell their, you know, their partner or whoever they're with, they don't want to tell them about their problems, especially financial. Like, that's not something you want to be worried about. You know, if a job's not going right, if, you know, your business is sort of not doing as well as it should be, I think you need to have somewhere to go, like a hub to be like, look, these are the things that are not great. You know, can you give me some advice? You know, and I think, yeah, for the small business, it's well tough because they just can't go anywhere. It's just one person.
You know, and all the things you've mentioned, you know, we've acknowledged that because you're doing so much at your end that every penny also counts for you. You know, especially if you're having to deal with chasing payments because no one's paying you on time. You're dealing with all of that. So in terms of, you know, the Mates of Mine program, we had Fischer on earlier on, and the fundraising they do is funding your sole traders, your family-run businesses to get that entirety. So if you wanted, you know, HR support, tech support, a helpline, it's all there for individuals like yourself. So if you are in that moment when you're in a van and you think, you know what, it's too much is happening at the same time, just want to reach out to someone, just want to say it, and hopefully they'll get me to that support I need after processing. It is there, and it's hopefully it's funded by, you know, organisations like Fischer that can give you this free resource, so you're just part of our community. And also we're running bi-monthly webinars, but it's for you to see others alike, and it's not just to get help, but to speak to other people that are going, yeah, mate, they've not paid me either, or whatever that is. But it's power, it's kind of strength in numbers, and I think that's what we're trying to create there. That you're not alone.
Yeah, and I think it is a community thing.
Yeah.
You know, people like Fischer, like, they do great stuff for tradesmen, and it's like, sort of, you know, I think somebody needs to come together and just be like, we've got all these people screaming out for help. You know, like, you know, people losing their businesses, people thinking about suicide. There's all these like different conversations that need to be had, and I think, you know, a collective amount of people is going to solve that problem, because, you know, they're dealing with, I'd say, like the bigger companies, they're dealing with employees that you know, they can see what's going on, but with a sole trader, it's just you're sort of like, where do I go? Do I tell another business about my problems? You're probably not going to. You're not going to tell another business that you're not doing great. You're not going to tell another business that your money's not great. You know, these are all like things that are building up in your head, you know. And I think, you know, having that, even just the webinars and stuff, you know, you can sit there in the van and watch a webinar, take notes, and be like, right, you know, I'll try this.
Exactly, and it's like we've talked about support. It sounds like you have an amazing support system with you, but I guess it's when it's work related, sometimes you need things addressed, you know, and there's one thing kind of offloading, but there's another, I actually want something fixed there. I want someone to help me and support me in ensuring that my job here is right, you know, or I'm not the only one that's dealing with this issue, you know, with this organisation, but it's for you to feel you're not alone. And I think, like you said, you know, you're out on the road all the time, and you know who do you tell? You know, who do you tell about these work problems? And I think it's that, and I think community is powerful. And what you said earlier, you know, your support system is your BMX community, and the power of that. So, absolutely, you know, that's something that we would like to be part of, you know, the Light program. But in terms of, you know, other individuals like yourself, if they're not maybe as kind of in this level that you are, where you're happy to talk about it, how do you think we could reach out to other kind of your sole traders?
I think it's hard to reach out to sole traders, because it's very difficult. That construction mentality, I don't think there's anything like that anywhere else. Sort of like, you know, the stigma, the banter, the sort of, you know, that trying to, it's like, you know, a crowbar in the door. You're trying to sort of like, trying to crack this egg, you know, be like, what's going on? But I think it takes other people to open up. I think it takes other people to be like, you know, it's fine that you feel a certain way. Like, you know, we all do. But it's whether or not do you want to be stuck feeling like this forever, or would you rather just show a little bit of vulnerability and then you just have all this, like, this weight lifted off? And I think just getting in touch with tradesmen, I think, you know, again, social media's like, would be great for that, I think, because it kind of like rules life a lot of the time, you know. I think if people saw that, it would sort of like, you know, maybe flick a switch and be like, oh, okay, you know, that's something that I need, or, you know, things like that. And, you know, I think big, I've always thought like, you know, big sort of like merchants, you know, suppliers. You know, if tradesmen are going in there at like 6, 7 in the morning and they feel really bad about the day, or they go there at the end of the day and they feel really bad, and they've got something there that they can pick up a leaflet, or they've got a phone number to call, or an email, or whatever it is, I think that should be a thing. Whether or not it, you know, I haven't done crazy amount of research whether it is or not, but the merchants that I go in, there's nothing about it. So I think it would just open, I think it would open the floodgates a little bit.
So it's that for us, you know, it's the first, you know, do you guys need it? And it sounds like, yes, you do. Sometimes you just want to see a number there to go, oh, actually, today I've had a tough day and I've just gone in to do my day-to-day work and I've just seen a number. So, yeah, if, you know, for us, we feel it's a population in the industry that sometimes don't see us, and we're trying to get ourselves out there so people know that they're not alone, but you're part of our community. We're in it together. And, you know, you shared, you know, earlier that if you don't mind me kind of going into this about suicide. And so is that your own personal experience with suicide? As in, you think about, was that?
Oh, yeah. I was treading on thin ice, for sure, at that point. When I was in the back of the van and I was like, you know, I didn't really care at that point. At that point, I was just like, I am literally, I don't know what else to do. I'm done. I've got nowhere to turn. You know, I've got nowhere to live. You know, I've got no partner. I've got nothing. You know, all my stuff was stored in my mum's garage. That got flooded and ruined. So all I had, literally, for, you know, nearly a year, was a gym bag, like a small gym bag full of clothes. That's all I had. And it was just that thing of, you know, I was in the back of the van. I'm not going to go into detail about what I was doing in there, because it's a pretty dark, you know, I don't want to go back there. But it was a pretty dark time for me at that point. Luckily enough, it didn't go the way it should have gone. But at that time, it was pretty bad. And unless you've been through it, unless you've spoken about it, unless you've had that feeling, no one is going to know. Like, no one will ever understand. And people are like, you know, a lot of people are like, attention seeking and this and that. It can't have been that bad. And I'm like, it definitely was that bad. Like, I'm growing up BMXing, like, and having all these crazy injuries. I'm pretty tough, like, mentally and physically, like, just beat up. But there's nothing I've had pain like that ever. And I think that, you know, seeing my cousin die in front of my eyes and having to deal with all that, you know, giving him CPR and all this stuff, it's like, it really puts it into perspective that it is a one-way ticket. Like, it really is. And I think that people don't understand that, about that feeling. But when it actually does happen to someone and you hear about it, you're like, they must have felt so bad. And you're like, all they had to do was just call a number, call a friend, you know, come stay around mine, we'll get a takeaway and we'll talk about it. Or, you know, if you want to go down the pub and chat with your mates, like, that's, you know, my personal experience with suicide, it's still, it's still a thought that pops into my head sometimes. I'm not going to lie, you know, it's still there. But, you know, I would never try and take action on it again, because I know it will pass. But it's, you know, it's there. Probably a lot of other people. But whether or not you act upon it is two different things, and I think you shouldn't. But, you know, for some people, it's the only way out. You know, it's a permanent solution for a temporary problem? You know.
Yeah. I honestly can't thank you enough for, sharing that, because, like you said there, it can bring you back, and that's why you don't want to get too close to it. But you just, sharing this, well, hopefully, just reach out. That would reach out to someone, and someone could be experiencing that similar thing. And like you said, just because if you thought of doing it before doesn't mean you're not thinking about it every day. But it's how you're feeling and how you're trying to cope with things. And I guess it's when you were going through it. Were you seeing people at the time? Was there? Do you think people could have noticed some of the signs at the time when they were with you?
I mean, a lot of the time I was on my own.
You were?
Isolated. I think that was the worst thing, is I was still working at that time. So I was going around as if nothing was going on. You know, a lot of people didn't even know that I was going through these problems, you know, and it's only when, I had a complete breakdown and I was just, I'd be on nights out and I'd burst into tears, I'd have some beers and then I'd just burst into tears and just open up them floodgates, and people were like, why didn't you say anything? And they're just like, I don't know, I was just on my own, just trying to get through it, and I think people can see the signs. I just don't think they know what they are. So, I don't think there's enough information about people who are having these thoughts. I don't think there's enough or people don't want to read the information that's like, if you see signs of this in somebody, something's going on, And I think I think there needs to be more stuff for, again, reaching out, reading the signs, and, just checking in.
I guess what kind of made me think as well, it's the job that you're in, you're working in isolation, so it's how can we all see you if you're, so I guess if there's more presence, what you're saying, then hopefully we can try and reach out to you when you are at that point of crisis. So, thank you. And in terms of, your support with your wife, does she understand some of the signs? Has she? Yeah. How is she in terms of supporting you with this?
I mean, she's great. Like, she has her own dealings with mental health. She's had trauma. She's, had other things that I don't understand. She's had things that don't make sense to me, but like I can't comprehend why these things happen, or and why she does it. But it's sort of, we know each other's boundary. We know each other where we go, I'm only feeling at like 10% when I get in, and she can sort of say, look, it's fine, I understand what's been going on. She's kind of cool with it, But I think she's had a bit of a hard ride with me, because before I met her, is obviously I didn't speak about anything. After that when I opened up the floodgates, it was like all these things started happening. It was like I'd have moments of like overthinking. I'd have moments of low mood, and then that'd carry on to like other things. She'd be like, "What is going on?" And it's because I don't know. As I told you before, like, I haven't processed any of this. I haven't seen somebody professionally, so it's kind of just goes on from that. And she's great with it. And same back at her. I try and support her if she's feeling a certain way. I'll just be like, look, like, what can I do to help? Do you want to talk about it? How was your day? And, that sort of thing. I think sometimes that's all it takes. Sometimes a little bit deeper, but, I think if you've got a good partner, they'll understand.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like, for you, you sharing that, you both are going through things. But it's you both opening and feeling safe in front of each other. And I think sometimes that's why people don't talk. It's because it's that feeling of unsafe. You know, what then happens with this information or all of that. So the fact that you have that is absolutely brilliant. I think you mentioned to me earlier she's half Filipino. Is that right?
She is. Yeah, she is.
So what do you think of the Filipino culture then? Because we've got something to talk about with mental health here. What are your
I think it's great, honestly. Like, I'd never experienced anything like when I first started dating her, met her mum. Mum was super friendly, and then I'll never forget. We went out for some drinks, and then we came back, hungover in the morning, on a Sunday, and I walk out, and I've sort of just got a pair of tracksuit bottoms on and a hoodie, and I open the door, and there was just the whole sort of like her friend group was there, like the whole community was there for like Sunday lunch. And I was like, "You all right? How's everything going?" And they were just like, "Who is this new guy? Like, who is this guy you've just like sort of let into your family?" But I go to like Filipino parties, like they love to dance, they love to eat, you know, great people.
Oh, thank you. You know, it's again another community, isn't it? And it's, you know, I know just being Filipino myself, we don't care who you are, similar to mental health, and we don't care who you are, what you do, or whatever that is. You are, well, you know, you matter.
Yeah.
You know, your life matter. You're part of that family, and you're part of them. So yeah, good family to be in there.
Yeah, there you go. And you know what they've done? They've done more than enough. Like, they've done so much for me. Like, in regards to, like, I've come from, you know, at that point, I didn't have a lot going on for myself. So to take me, like, you know, when I spoke to my missus and was just like, "Oh, look, like, I've kind of got nowhere to go. I don't want to stay here." I was like, "But I'm just letting you know what's going on." And she asked her mum, and it was cool. And it was like opening your doors to someone who is like, not a stranger, but near enough a stranger, you know, to be like, "Oh, it's cool if you like crash here," and, you know, and she's helped us through a lot, you know, in regards to, you know, even down to like when we've been short of money, like, you know, before I started the business, and it was like sort of through COVID, and, you know, she was really helpful, and like they all are, you know, they're all great.
Have you had our lecture on yet then?
Yes. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It's good food.
Well, you know, it was good to, you know, learn that. You know, Filipinos, my culture, my community. So it's one of those things when you meet other people that know of other Filipinos, it's always like, family. And you know, that's what we, you know. And when I think of my culture, I think of when mates and I are trying to create a culture where people feel like you are part of this bigger family, but it's more of there is support there, and you know, so it was kind of like he's in safe hands. He's with Filipinos.
Yeah,
but,
exactly.
But yeah, so is there any kind of final words you wanted to give to tell anyone, to tell others out there, you know, with everything that's went on? What are your final words to tell others?
I think, you know, if you come from a sort of not a safe environment, like someone like me who's been questioning their whole life about how things could have been, you know, you probably feel a certain way. You know, you probably don't want to tell anyone, because back, like, you know, with my story, it was sort of like I didn't feel safe at that point. You know, I didn't have nowhere to turn, no one to talk to, no sort of authority figure, and the authority figure I did have wasn't nice, you know. So I think if you're in a safe space and you're aware of everybody around you, or you've got good friends, good family, you're close with people, just open up the doors. Just see what happens, because, you know, it can go one or two ways. It can go, "I didn't know you was going through that, and I'm really sorry you went through that," or, you know, "How are you feeling now?" Or it's going to go the way of, you know, that sort of stigma route. But if you tell them and that happens, they're not the right people, you know. And I think before it gets to boiling point, before it gets to suicide, before it gets to low mood and, you know, withdrawal, you know, like all those signs of you know, getting away from people, just open your mouth. Like, it's just, you know, just do it. whether it's a stranger, it could be somebody who, like, you meet at a party and it gets a little bit deep, and then you go, right, there's my chance. Take that chance. And then once you do, you just be like, it's like you just open up. It's crazy. But yeah, I just think reach out, whether it's to a charity, your mates, you know, even your GP or whoever it is, just go for it. You'll be pleasantly surprised with how it gets received.
Well, it sounds like simple advice, isn't it? Just speak up, but it's hard when you're going through it, isn't it? Because it sounds like a massive leap that you're having to take, and it sounds like it was a massive leap that you took. And even if sometimes you still have bad days, it was the best leap you could have made, because you know you're closer to people. So thank you for really preaching for people to do that step, because it's a hard step.
It's a huge step.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, whatever you're going through, whatever secrets you've got, it's massive. No matter how big or small it is, in your little world, it's huge. You know, and when you're ready, do it, but don't wait till it's too late, I would say.
Well, Tom, I really appreciate you sharing all of this, sharing your story, and just being so honest and open. I know it's not easy to do this, so thank you. And I know that others who will listen to this will really impact and change their lives. So thank you so much, Tom. Really appreciate it.
That's all right. You're more than welcome.
Thank you.